Today we're going to talk about credit score.
How important is your credit and how does it affect your life?
Stay tuned. Hello everybody, this is Gamalier, broker, realtor with Sturgis Realty Group.
And I'm Alan Rios. I'm the realtor with Sturgis Realty Group here in Metro Atlanta.
And today we'll have a great topic for you, and it is what is credit score and how credit score affects your life.
And let's get right into it. What is a credit score? Well, it's a score that's given to an individual that ranges anywhere from around 300 to as high as 850.
And this credit score is given by three bureau companies, which are not a public company, they're actually a private company. And again, like Alan mentioned, they range between 300 to 850. And I call it, it's like a report card. A report card that when you go buy a home, when you go buy a house, or when you go rent an apartment, they look at those scores. And again, those scores ranges between 300 to 850.
So what is a poor credit score versus, say, a great credit score? Well, let's take a look. If you have a credit score that's below 619, that would be considered a poor credit score, right?
Yes.
If your credit score is between 620 and 719, well, you're in the average. Average American is somewhere in that range. If you have a credit score between 720 and 779, now we're talking about a very good credit score. And anything above 780 to 850, hey, you're in the excellent category.
Yeah, so the higher your credit score, the more money you'll be saving in the long term, because when you have a lower credit score, you're actually going to be paying more interest rate in the loans. But also, the bad thing is when your credit score is not such a great score, it limits you from a lot. And a lot of people don't realize that. Obviously, number one is you need a house to stay, whether you're looking to buy or rent. A lot of places require a good credit score to live in a good place. So a lot of times you get limited from places where you could live because just based on credit score alone. But also, obviously, people don't realize when you go look for a job, also a lot of jobs are pulling credit score and looking into that, especially if you're working in the financial industry. A lot of those banks or institutions, they're going to put credit and going to make a decision also to take a look how responsible you're managing your credit also.
All right, so who actually determines your credit score, right? You did mention there were private companies. There's three bureau agencies that are responsible for your credit score. One is Equifax, right? The other one is Experian, that's number two. Number three is TransUnion. So those three private companies will determine your FICO credit score.
So it's very important, obviously, that you know your credit score. And again, at each of this agency, actually, what they're going to do, they're going to give you a score. And that, again, a score that is based between 300 and 850. Each of those three bureau companies will give you a score. And when the banks are pulling the score to look at to see what type of score they're going to look at, those three credit scores that they're reported by this agency. The most important to know also that there's different models when they go into score systems. There's FICO score, there's Vantage score. Those are the two famous out there. But the most important, it is the FICO score. A lot of people get surprised and say, "Hey, Gamalier, I've been tracking my credit score in Credit Karma. And now I went to buy, when the loan officer pulled my score, it was a lot different. What happened?" Well, that was because
there were different
scoring models. So you definitely want to make sure to know what is your FICO score, and that you could go to FICO.com and pull your FICO score that way. But also a quick tip is that you could get an annual report, annualcreditreport.com. You could get a free credit report there, and it's not going to give you a score, but it's going to give you other information that this companies are reporting. That way, if you see a mistake there, which is very common a lot of time, you could actually contact those companies, and they're supposed to remove that for free, no cost, if there's something that they're reporting that is not correct.
Yeah, so a Vantage score is a good starting point, but the FICO score is what's going to determine your true score. All right, so how do they calculate your credit score, right? Well, there's five major parts when it comes to determining your credit score. And number one, the agency looks at your payment history. That comprises about 35% of your credit score. That's huge, right?
Yes.
So make sure you get your past accounts done on time.
Pay history, obviously, we talk about most important. They're going to be looking at the last 2 years. Those counts a lot pointage, so make sure that you don't have any late. And quick tip, Also, if you do have a late credit card, you can actually always call the credit card and get a forgiveness payment, late payment. A lot of times they do give that to you. If you never had a late, you could actually take one off. So make sure you call and ask. You don't get anything if you don't ask.
That's right. It's better to ask than just to ignore it, right? Most credit card companies will work with you if you do make that call. All right, the number 2 component, amounts owed. This is about 30%, and that's how much debt do you actually carry in total, right? So that's a big part of your credit score.
So for example, if you have a credit card that you own $1,000, and you have a credit of $1,000 usage, and you go ahead and use 500, so that gives 50% usage. You don't really want to keep, the best way is try to keep it below 50%, but if you can, the best way is to at least 35% and below. So in this sample of $1,000, you want to go up to use it up to 350 and make sure you pay it. So that way, obviously, you get the benefit of getting the history of the car, but you now also don't have a high debt ratio, what they call it, which you're using too much of that credit.
Yeah, so be very careful with that. Third component is the length of credit history. So this comprises about 15%. How long have you had your credit cards open, right? So that's key there. And as Gamalier mentioned, having those accounts open, the length of time can determine your credit score.
And that is very important. One of the mistakes that people do many times is that they actually go and close their credit cards. What they don't realize is they're closing their history too. So now you went from having a credit card that you had there for 5 years, and you closed it out, you erased all that history, and you went and opened a new card, and now you're only reporting that new history. So you never want to close credit cards, and it's the reason why is, especially if you had a lot of history and you erase all that history that you have there. Just don't use it, just keep it there and keep that history.
Exactly. Now it does comprise 15%, but hey, it's still an important aspect when it comes to determining your credit score.
Every point helps.
That's right. So number 4, credit mix. This comprises about 10% of your credit score, and they're going to be looking at how do you use your credit, your car loans, maybe your mortgage payment, credit cards. You want to have a nice mix of credit accounts. They want to see how responsible you are.
Because that shows the different credit lines that you may have and how responsible you're being handling different type of accounts. Like Alan mentioned, like if you have a credit card versus a mortgage, you're paying 2 different lines. So it shows the lender, or it shows the bureaus, that you're being responsible and you're managing things well. So that's one point. Having mixed credit definitely help your score.
Yeah, and then the 5th component comprises about 10% as well, and that's new credit. Have you opened up any new credit accounts, say in the last several months? They'll take a look at that and see how you're managing that as well.
Yeah, they're looking at, like we talked earlier, they looked at about your new credit, looking at how you've been doing that last year or the last 2 years. So they're pretty new. They're really looking at those last 2 years to look at how you've been handling everything. But I would say every component of these 5 components help you to build a better credit score.
All right, so we talked about a lot of different aspects of credit scores. So how does this really affect your life, right? When you think about, hey, you have a credit score of say 600 versus someone who has a credit score of 800.
Yeah, and I see
it does have an impact.
It does, Alan, and I see this all the time, unfortunately, where you have individuals that great people and everything, but they just didn't take really look into what their credit score was, and they use things that never
didn't really take it seriously.
And sometimes it could be just a medical bill or something that you don't even know is affecting you, and then you go trying to get into a nice place, nice apartment, but they don't want to give you a place. Everybody's declining you based on your credit score, so that affects your life that way, and a place just where you want to live. But also another thing is people who are looking for jobs nowadays, and you apply for a great job and you didn't get the job and you didn't know why. A lot of times it's because your credit score was too poor. But obviously the great thing about credit is it could get fixed. Doesn't matter where you're standing.
It's not permanent.
It's not permanent, definitely.
You can get it up.
So it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in a situation where your credit score is not that great, just don't ignore it. One of the biggest mistakes that people do is ignore. And that animal becomes that bigger and bigger. It's like a little seed that keeps growing negatively. So you gotta definitely cut it and start working on it. And there's different options. You could do it yourself, or you can also hire a professional. Obviously, I always say when you're hiring a professional, you know, you're going to get a lot more help, and they're going to be able to tackle it a little bit faster and fix it for you faster too.
Yeah, it's like going to see a doctor, right? You have a condition you want taken care of. You want to go to an expert that's going to be able to manage that for you, right? So same thing when it comes to, you know, repairing that credit. Sometimes you can fix it yourself. Sometimes you need help when it comes to a situation like that. All right, we're realtors, right? So a question we get asked quite often is, what credit score do I need to buy a home, Gamalier?
And it's a good question. Obviously, that when it comes to that, most major banks, you know, gonna look at 620 and above.
Yeah.
But there's some specific program for first-time buyer that could go as low as 580. That will allow you. Normally, keep in mind the lower the score is, the higher interest rate you're gonna pay, and sometimes the higher down payment also.
Sure. And if your score is, say, 640 or above, well, you may be accepted for a conventional loan right there. And that's a 3% minimum down payment. You can go higher, obviously. But that's just a general idea of what scores you need if you're looking to buy a home. And obviously, we've got the right lenders we can put you in touch with to get you started.
So I hope this information been helpful to you. And I hope that if you're in a position where you've been ignoring the credit and not looking at it, that you could at least look at it in an annual base, at least.
Sure.
And again, don't forget that you could go to annualcreditreport.com and get a free report that tells you everything that's going on and what these agencies are looking. And if you're in a position where you're looking at your credit again and there's a mistake in there, go ahead and contact this bureau, and then you could do it online too. Exactly. And they're supposed to do a research and with specific time. If it's not correct, they're supposed to take that off out of your credit also.
All right, and make sure you click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click that notification bell as well so you're notified when the latest videos come out, and they are released weekly. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Have a great day.